Thank you all for joining us today here on Zoom and in person. This is our first official day of Earth Week. Our theme this year is Many Voices, One Planet. This is our Carson Scholars Lightning Talk and plenary session featuring Winona LaDuke. My name is Mariah Rogers, and I am one of the co-chairs of this year's Earth Week from the Geography Department. This is our second official event of Earth Week, so thank you to all of you that participated in the pre-excitement events, the Seas volleyball game, the work projects this past weekend at Flowers and Bullets and at University of Arizona Community Gardens. Thank you to everyone who came to our poster session earlier today. It was great to see representation from each of the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences departments. And what a range of topics and different ideas and events. Thank you to everyone who participated. And for those of you that participated, we have the results. So our first place winner is Megan Nickerson. Our second place winner is Jacob Blaze. And our third place winner is Kira Harris. So thank you, all of you. Winners' posters will be on our Earth Week website, so be on the lookout for that. Before we start this program though, we wanted to give a land acknowledgement statement to formally acknowledge where we are currently standing. We wanted to respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and Yaqui tribes. The university and the people in it are committed to diversity and inclusion and strive to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. Thank you again to the Indigenous peoples and Native nations of whose territories and lands we are currently on, and for their long-standing relationships with the environment and environmental stewardship. To start off this plenary session though, we wanted to restate our theme this year, Many Voices, One Planet. We picked this theme because we wanted to acknowledge and celebrate the Earth from many and all different perspectives and knowledge systems. Earth Week is a time for SEAS students, faculty, staff, and others from different communities to learn and share knowledge about the Earth. We wanted to thank everyone who is involved in the process of creating Earth Week this year. This includes faculty, staff, and students from the different departments of the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences. This includes the Arizona Institute for Resilient Environment and Societies, the Department of the Environmental Science, the Department of Geoscience, the Department of Hydrology and Atmospheric Sciences, the Laboratory of Tree Ring Research, the Department of Natural Resources and the Environment, the Carson Scholars Program, Biosphere 2, and the department hosting this year's Earth Week, and my home department, the School of Geography, Development, and Environment. We wanted to give a special thank you to the other SEAS graduate student Earth Week representatives, the SEAS department heads, and other board members. We also wanted to give a special thanks to these specific individuals. John Chorover, the acting director of the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences and department head of the Earth Environmental Sciences, as well as Amanda Lucero, the Air Events and ENR2 room coordinator, Aaron Bouget at Biosphere 2 for helping create this Zoom webinar, Amanda Percy, Liz Cordova, Vicki Henry, and Adriana Kelly, the administrative staff for the School of Geography, Development, and Environment. And lastly, we would like to thank Andrew Cromery, the acting director of the School of Geography, Development, and Environment. And thank you again, Tenzin Yankee, my co-chair for this year's Earth Week. Tonight's plenary session and all of the combined Earth Week events would not have been possible without you all. So thank you to all of you. Next is our schedule for Earth Week 2022. This is our schedule, which you may have seen around the different buildings like here in ENR2, but to go over it quickly, we will have LDIA tomorrow. On Wednesday during the day, we will have Geo Days, Tree Ring Days, and Aries SP Connect. On Wednesday night, we will have SEAS Trivia for all of you who would like to have fun and put your random knowledge about SEAS and the University of Arizona to good use. And on Thursday, we will have Geo Days and Envision. And lastly, on Friday, we will have the SNRE Expo and the SGDE and MDP Get to Know Your Faculty Members Lightning Talk. If you would like to have more info or want to know anything else or more about these events, please scan this QR code here or go to seas.arizona.edu/earthweek-2022. Now for the event that you all came here for, tonight's order of events is the Carson Scholars are up first, the first of the three-part interdisciplinary series, Resilience in the 21st Century, with their first part, Relate. Later this evening, we will have Winona LaDuke from Minnesota coming to speak about her work. And then we'll have a 15-minute Q&A session using Menti.com, as well as we'll have that same program up for the Carson Scholars too. And after this event, we'll have some refreshments in the courtyard to mingle and connect with all the different departments and anybody else who is here. But now I'll hand it off to Andrea Gerlach to start the Carson Scholars Program.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Andrea Gerlach. I'm the faculty here in the School of Geography, Development and the Environment, and Director of the Center for Studies in Public Policy. Thanks for being here this afternoon. And on behalf of the University of Arizona's Carson Scholars Program, we're really honored to be here to help kick off Earth Week with this plenary event. And it's quite a schedule. It's really an impressive set of events.
Andrea, can I ask you the microphone?
Sure.
Or I can just come over here, so it's a little, okay, I'll stay here, sorry. I keep forgetting with COVID, you can't get close to people. I have to get that in my head, the teacher in me. The Carson Scholar Program is a science communication program committed to training the next generation of environmental researchers in the art of public communication. We aim to build a network of graduate students devoted to furthering their capacity to communicate their research to the public and decision makers through training and writing, media, and outreach. It's a real pleasure to share this responsibility with wonderful fellow mentors, Kevin Bonine and Chris Coninos. We're grateful for all of the administrative support of AIR and our great program coordinator, Ariane Moore-Felsman. Thank you for making all of what we do so possible. The work of the Carson Scholar Program is really fortunate to receive broad support across the university and from private donors. And I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that. We're now in the 10th year of the program, working with more than 100 scholars across 25 disciplines here at the university. And we have raised and awarded more than $500,000 in fellowship money. You can get a little taste of the work here this afternoon by some of the current cohort of Carson Scholar Fellows. We have this theme this year of resilience in the 21st century. And this is how it's going to work for today. We have 5. Oh, so we haven't been seeing the slides. Thank you so much for calling it out. Thank you. So how it works for today with these lightning talks from Carson Scholars is we have 5 speakers, 5 talks, approximately 7 minutes, and then we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. We'll be hosting 2 sessions back-to-back next week that are part 2 and part 3 of this theme, Resilience in the 21st Century. And we hope you can join us next week to hear some of these great talks as well. But for now, I'm pleased to turn it over to Leah to get things started. Okay, it's not distracting. Okay. Do you want to stay here?
Oh, okay. So tonight our theme is relate. The Anthropocene is defined by a series of crises: mass extinction, climate change, and a pandemic. Whether directly or indirectly, these crises reflect a breakdown of relationships between humans and nature. By learning how to nurture our relationships with other species, we can find solutions to these crises and build a world that is healthier for humans and the environment. Our speakers today are going to acquaint you with our work to understand and support a diverse array of multi-species interactions. Okay, So my name is Leah Veldhuisen, and today I'll be telling you guys about flower power, how co-flowering can help plants survive in the face of climate change. Have you ever played Jenga? You know when you're pulling out those little pieces of wood and the whole tower comes tumbling down at the very end? So imagine that tippy tower right before it falls, and then imagine a meadow full of wildflowers in the Colorado Rockies in the summer. And it's full of pink paintbrushes and yellow sunflowers and yellow anemones. And it might look something like this meadow up here. This community of organisms is functioning a lot like that tippy Jenga tower. And in my work, I'm hoping to figure out how the woven evolutionary history of these plants is affecting the composition of their communities. So how do I answer these questions? I work in these meadows in Colorado, and I work at the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab, which is marked here in the state of Colorado. It's in the western half of the state, and it's really near to the town of Crested Butte. At the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab, I have 15 plots that are about 1 square meter each, and there's 5 at 3 different sites. And you can see there's 2 yellow flags up there in the middle photo, and those are marking 2 corners of one of my plots. So each week throughout the summer, I tie little pieces of yarn around flowers as they open. And I also sit in these plots and keep track of all the bees and other pollinators that are entering the plots. So if you see in those 2 right-hand photos up there, that top one is those paintbrushes, and they've got purple yarn tied around them. And that sunflower has orange yarn. And these different colors are indicative of the different weeks that these flowers have opened. And doing this lets me keep track of when the plants start to flower, how long they flower for, when they stop flowering, and the other plants around them that might be flowering at the same time. So I'm also curious how these relationships between overlapping flowering timing and pollinators that are visiting, how that changes at different elevations. So I mentioned in the last slide that I have 3 different sites, and those 3 sites are at 3 different elevations. The lowest one is marked up there at 9,200 feet. The middle site is at 10,400 feet. And then the highest site is at 11,000 feet, which is where I was standing when I took this photo last summer. So I'm curious about these relationships of flowering overlap and pollinators. And as we look at these photos, as humans, these are beautiful photos. There's lots of open flowers, there's bright colors, and there's really highly contrasting colors. The bees and the other pollinators are also really attracted to these plots. So in theory, we would expect that the more flowers that are open and the brighter colors they are, the more those pollinators are going to want to visit that patch. And that's really important because these plants need the pollinators to visit and pollinate them so they're able to reproduce more successfully. So we expect with these more open flowers that we might see more success for these plants. And that might lead to differing compositions of their communities. I'm also really curious how the evolutionary history of these plants plays a role in this. So we have this evolutionary tree up here. And in particular, my question is, are these plants that flower at the same time, are they more closely related like this strawberry and this sunflower up here? Or are the plants that are flowering at the same time in the summer, are they distantly related like this fern and this sunflower? So in the background of all of this, all of these plants are trying to survive climate change. And this is a map of the state of Colorado, and this is from October 2021, so it's pretty recent. And this is showing us differing levels of drought throughout the state. So you can see up there that almost the whole state is facing at least some level of drought, ranging from that bright yellow that's abnormally dry, all the way up to exceptional drought in that dark red in the far northwestern corner of the state. So these plants are facing this drought as well as a lot of other impacts from climate change. And there's a few things that might happen from that. The plants might be able to adjust and they can grow smaller leaves or bigger leaves or deepen their roots to be able to cope with those different conditions. They might go higher, somewhere that's cooler and wetter. They might go extinct in one certain area, or they might go extinct entirely. No matter how they cope or maybe don't cope, it's going to change the composition of those plant communities. So if we come back to this Jenga tower that's about to tip over, it's a lot like these plant communities. And if we lose even 1 or 2 species from these communities, it might be like pulling out that last block of the Jenga tower. So in my work, I'm hoping to figure out which pieces of this tower are the most important and how we can preserve these meadows going forward. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Payne, and today I'll be telling you a bit about my work with Sonoran desert cats and Scats, integrating host and viral genomics to aid wild cat conservation. First, I'd just like everyone to take a moment to appreciate the fact that you are surrounded by an imperceptible world of viruses, right now and all the time. Although invisible to the eye, viruses are ubiquitous and hugely diverse, with shapes reminiscent of microscopic spiders, snakes, and sea urchins. These viruses are so diverse and successful because they've evolved to hijack biological machinery from other organisms, like you and me, for their own reproduction. This usually isn't really any cause for concern, but sometimes it can make us sick. High-profile offenders like SARS-CoV-2 make the news and highlight the potential for deadly human viruses to originate in animals. However, the vast majority of viruses remain unknown to science. That's actually where my work comes in. I'm a PhD candidate in the Genetics Graduate Interdisciplinary program here at the U of A. Because all organisms have genetic material that encodes the building blocks that make us unique and allow us to function, genomes can be really useful tools for understanding connections among organisms, for example, communities of hosts and pathogens. This sort of work requires time in the lab, extracting DNA, amplifying it, and preparing it for sequencing, as well as time at a computer analyzing the genetic sequencing data, although it's usually not quite that colorful, to be honest. Specifically, I'm a conservation geneticist, and my interests lie at the intersection of wildlife conservation biology and virology. I utilize fecal samples, specifically scats collected from the environment, as sources of genetic information from both viruses and their hosts to clarify how emerging disease threatens populations of wildlife and possibly human societies. Let me show you what I mean. The Sonoran Desert region here in Arizona and Sonora, Mexico is unique in that it's home to 4 species of wildcats: the puma, bobcat, and our elusive spotted cats, the jaguar and ocelot. The bobcat shown here is particularly interesting because its habitat often extends right into our backyards, bringing them into close contact with humans and domestic animals. Because viruses are ubiquitous, each of these cats is carrying its own unique community of viruses, just like each of us is. Now, most of these viruses won't impact the cat's health at all, or the health of any other species for that matter, but some can cause disease and might be relevant for conservation or public health. We can piece together which viruses a cat is carrying using the scat that it leaves behind in the environment. In the scat, we'll find genetic information from the viruses, but also get useful genetic information from the cats themselves. This allows us to get an idea of how these populations are faring in the wild. But like I said, the Sonoran Desert is actually home to 4 cat species, so the community I'm interested in really looks a bit more like this. Specifically, I'm working to integrate genetic sequence data from the Sonoran Desert's 4 cats, the puma, bobcat, jaguar, and ocelot, with the genetic information from their viruses. I'm doing this to answer a few questions. First, I'm trying to figure out how viruses are shared in this community of hosts. That is, what are the most common routes of viral spread? Is there a lot of transmission among these different species, or is most transmission happening among individuals of the same species? I'm also trying to figure out which of our cat populations are most vulnerable to disease, as well as how certain genetic factors of these cats, like their genetic diversity, shape the communities of viruses that they're carrying or that they get exposed to. And of course, I'm also trying to figure out what specific viral disease threats are present here that we might need to be concerned about as conservationists. So why study viruses in wild cats specifically? When many of us think of animals that are important in disease research, we might first think of bats, especially since the onset of COVID-19. But this research has really important implications for the preservation of these cats. First, 2 of these species, the ocelot, shown here, as well as the jaguar, are both endangered in the US and Mexico, where they reach just the northern edge of their shrinking ranges. So although bobcats and pumas are much more prevalent and aren't considered endangered, it's still important that we study them because they might help transmit certain viruses to our more endangered cats. And because they're more common, they're a lot easier for us to monitor. And if we thought it was hard to get humans to mask up, good luck getting these cats to wear masks to protect them. My cat won't even wear a collar. Additionally, it's important that we work to protect all of these cats because they help regulate populations of other wildlife through predation. That means losing any of these species could throw whole ecosystems out of balance. Additionally, as humans continue to encroach on wildlife habitat, we're creating ample opportunities for viral spread to and from wildlife. So by identifying viruses in wildlife, we'll be able to better understand potential threats to humans and domestic animals too. So this is why I think it's crucial that we work to unravel this web of connections among communities of wildlife, viruses, and human societies. I'm honored to have the opportunity here at the U of A to use genomic research to help do just that. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Allie Burnett, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can work with nature to build healthy relationships with urban wildlife. In the last 30 years, urban acreage has increased by 80% across the globe, more than doubling the amount of surface area devoted towards cities worldwide. Generally speaking, biodiversity plummets in urban environments, and only the most flexible or adaptive species survive. Unfortunately, these are also the species that we label nuisance species, and we try really hard to eradicate them, but we actively filter for these species when we create environments like this. With cities expanding outward, the local wildlife are forced into closer contact with humans and may become dependent on artificial resources to navigate and survive as natural corridors and food resources disappear. Fewer natural resources in turn means that competition over artificial resources will also likely intensify. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. We can do a lot of adjustments to our own behavior in order to improve human-wildlife relationships. For instance, securing attractants under lock and key, putting our trash cans out the day of instead of the night before, and allowing wildlife to forage on their own can all help prevent habituation and prevent future human-wildlife conflict. In addition to changing how we interact with wildlife, we can also build our cities so that they work with nature. So often cities are built on rivers, which are also natural wildlife corridors, which means that nature kind of hands us a map of where animals move. But a lot of times you see that cities will build right up to the edges of the river, and they'll channelize the river so that it runs in a certain direction at a certain speed. But this really severs connectivity between natural areas. So here in this left photo, you can see that there's two main green spaces, but they're isolated from each other by roads and houses. So if wildlife want to go from one area to another, they have to cross those roads and those yards in order to get to that area. Instead, what we might do is preserve these areas. So here on the right, you can see that a similarly sized river is instead encased in a ribbon of green. This means that the wildlife don't necessarily have to traverse roads and yards in order to move around to different green spaces. So by preserving this natural network, we can, one, reduce habitat loss and biodiversity in urban areas. Two, we can help reduce human-wildlife conflicts by providing them with natural resources so they don't have to use those roads. And three, we also provide a place where humans can relax and exercise and connect with nature. So Tucson offers a particular advantage for wildlife. Even though we also, like other cities, build right up to the edge of the rivers, because our rivers run seasonally, this means that there's still space in the literal riverbed where trees and grasses and shrubs can still grow. This not only provides a corridor for our wildlife to use, but it also provides habitat for them so that they're more likely to hunt here in the washes instead of your backyard. So to minimize human wildlife conflict in Tucson and work towards building a healthier, more biodiverse city, my project uses 3 particular approaches. So one, I'm looking at I'm looking at the proportion of wildlife diets that are natural versus artificial. I'm looking at how humans respond to conflict and whether those responses are effective at preventing future conflict. And I'm also looking at which characteristics wildlife selects for so that we can preserve and build corridors to help guide them through the city and away from conflict-prone areas. So I have 3 main tools to do this. On the left, I'm using stable isotope analysis to find out what they eat. In the middle, I'm using online surveys to survey the public and understand how they typically respond and whether this is effective. And finally, on the far right, I'm using wildlife cameras to map wildlife use across these corridors, across a gradient of vegetation and urban density. So here's just a couple of my photos so far that I wanted to share with you guys. We have a high diversity of wildlife in Tucson. Even though it's a pretty urban city, we still have a lot of species that use this because of those wildlife corridors. I can definitely tell you that coyotes and javelina are very prevalent throughout the city, and they use those washes like highways to maneuver through the city and avoid humans. We also have a really abundant population of cottontails that also helps feed those coyotes. And then the bobcats are actually a bit more shy and they require more vegetative cover. So we see those more in the suburban areas rather than in the center of the city. And then some species like badgers and gray foxes are not able to adapt to the circumstances that we put them through in Tucson. So they are really only found on the very outskirts of the city and rarely venture further in. So the take-home message here is that cities are primarily built for humans, but are never comprised solely of humans. We have the privilege of living with a multitude of species, and if we can account for the creatures that lived there before us, as well as learn how to navigate conflicts with those that continue to live with us, we can engineer cities that act as a mutual benefit for both humans and the local ecosystem. Thank you.
They can see the screen. Zooming in. Thank you. Okay. Oh yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for coming this afternoon. My name is Charlotte Dawson, and I'm a doctoral student in cultural anthropology and American Indian studies here at the University of Arizona, and I study human-horse relationships. So I'm going to talk a bit about my own research and an applied project that I'm currently working on to develop a horse-facilitated learning program for young folks in Tucson. So I'm obsessed with animals. I grew up with animals. Horses were some of my best friends growing up. They taught me how to communicate with humans and animals, how to be intentional and confident in my bodily movements. And most importantly, they taught me how to develop meaningful long-term relationships with the non-human world.
Some people called me a crazy horse girl, but my interests, I think, went beyond loving horses into curiosity about how these interspecies connections develop and what kinds of impacts they have on all parties. And here's some photos of my favorite horse teacher, Tango, who's been my best buddy since childhood. So now I'm working on looking at the educational and therapeutic capacities of human-horse relationships in indigenous communities. So I'm looking at how humans and horses are partnering in cultural heritage maintenance efforts to reawaken material traditions like regalia production in the top right photo or horse painting in the top left photo, and also how humans and horses are partnering in more sovereignty-based efforts like the defensive water protection efforts pictured below, which is something that our plenary speaker has been involved in for quite some time. This is a photo from up in Minnesota. So these are all forms of equine facilitated learning to me, or horse facilitated learning. So EFL is a way to describe how humans and horses can partner together as co-guides and co-facilitators to learn with each other and help increase people's self-awareness and emotional awareness, and as well as their just relationship building capacities. So this is a process of relational development where humans and horses come together and share knowledge and learn to effectively and respectfully communicate with each other. And with this approach, we see horses as agentive persons with their own intentions and the ability to act on those intentions, which are always respected. Horses aren't coerced in any of these structured equine facilitated learning programs. So horses are really valuable teachers in this context because they're very hypersensitive to our moods and our body language, and they require near constant presence in the moment and attention, creating this really powerful feedback loop where they react to and mirror what people are bringing to the interaction. And current research on equine facilitated learning proves what horse people have always known, that being in contact with horses is really good for you. In some studies of structured EFL programs with marginalized young people, participants showed increased mood, senses of confidence, hope, and empathy. And having experienced some of these transformational capacities of human-horse relationships makes me really excited to work on an applied project with a diverse group of community collaborators to create an EFL program here in Tucson. So I'm working with some professors from the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences and the College of Veterinary Medicine, alongside with our community partner, ArcSpan, to develop this program. ArcSpan is a nonprofit here in Tucson that helps connect young, usually BIPOC folks in their teens and 20s with resources as they navigate some really difficult life challenges. And we're going to be working at the College of Vet Med's current facility, which is the Campbell Agricultural Facility on the right-hand side that I'm sure many of you all have seen before. And we are going to be partnering with the horses that live there. They're a herd of retired trail riding horses from a local dude ranch that now are helping teach vet students. So our activities will range from individual or herd observations of horses, as you can see in the right-hand picture, where groups or individuals people will watch and try to see how the horses are interacting, how they're experiencing the people's presence, and they'll talk through some of those experiences that they had. And then we'll also have one-on-one activities, as you can see in the bottom left photo, with a single horse and a single person in an enclosure together, where they're tasked with doing activities together, like putting a halter on a horse, leading them, grooming them. And all of this will be guided by a facilitator who will help the human participants interpret the horse's body language, think through some of the communication strategies that they used, what was effective, what wasn't effective, and just think through anything else that came up for them during these activities. So we're hoping that by putting these young people into contact in structured spaces with horses, that they can continue to improve their sense of internal resilience, build on their communication skills in ethical and respectful ways, overcome and cope with challenges, as there always are when you're working with non-humans. And we're helping remind them of their place as stewards in our more than human communities. We're also well aware that the horse world is very exclusive in this area, both economically and culturally. So we're just really excited to put these young folks into contact with horses that wouldn't usually have this opportunity. And it can open up future job possibilities or just future enjoyment possibilities.
And most importantly, we're really interested in, oh, this clearly, you have to see the cute comic. There we go. We're putting these people back into connection with animals despite power structures that are predicated on separating BIPOC folks from lands and animals. And that's something that's really important to us in this project. We're going to continue to do future research as we develop the program. And we're going to have to think about some methodological questions of how we're actually going to measure human and horse satisfaction throughout this process. And then we'll also think through some other kinds of questions, like what makes horses better than, say, a good human counselor for these kinds of activities. So overall, in my research and in the supply project, I'm really interested in reconnecting people with non-human companions so that we can demonstrate how to live in healthy shared environments where all persons, human and non-human, can thrive. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Zollinger, and I'm a PhD student in art and visual culture education. And today I want to tell you about learning with ants. So picture this. It's a bright summer day, and under the hot sun, a tiny piece of popcorn begins to advance over a sidewalk. And nearby, other pieces of popcorn begin to progress in the same direction. And above, an audience of children has gathered, breathlessly watching this extraordinary popcorn migration. It's ants, one child exclaims, and suddenly ants moving popcorn has transformed from mundane background to dramatic intrigue. I am an artist and multi-species education researcher. I study how children learn to relate to the living world and how those relationships are shaped by art and science and firsthand experiences with plants, animals, and places. Though we continue to learn well beyond classroom spaces and throughout our lives, the experiences that we have in childhood stay with us, and very likely it frames how we see the world. I develop and research environmental education for learning in places like a riparian forest or a working farm, or even your own backyard. Through a dual lens of art and science, children are asked to question, interpret, and respond to their surroundings in diverse ways. This dual approach is important. Science uses empirical observation and logic to make sense of the phenomena around us, but all science is inflected with our collective values and beliefs, the notions that add up to what we call culture. And art helps us communicate and translate culture. Art gives qualitative meaning to the world, and it can teach us the value of things for what we choose to study and what we care about. Together, art and science can show us a universe more complex and more beautiful than either approach could separately show us. And in the face of climate chaos, rather than leave us paralyzed, they can give us the tools and the knowledge to embolden and empower us. So children are adept observers, and they quickly pick up on the ways that nature is presented in art, in literature, in language, and in science, as well as by the actions of their fellow human beings. But amid this flood of information and influence, there are other kinds of learning that occur when children meet with a whole host of other species. When children learn alongside beetles and trees and caterpillars and get dirt under their fingernails, they learn with, not just about, the living world. Close encounters with plants and animals teach us that there are many ways to look at and be in the world. And this pushes us to consider other ways that we might imagine care and kinship and intelligence. So what do I look for? I'm interested in the ways that real life experiences resurface in children's imaginative thinking. So I look for evidence of budding multi-species relationships in the ways that children talk about and make images about their experiences, like eating a wild strawberry for the first time or holding a squirmy earthworm in their hands. And I especially look at how they draw. Drawing is an impulse that often comes so easily to children. So drawing is not just about making pictures, although that is a big part of it. For many children, drawing can be how they make sense of experiences, how they communicate new ideas. And it's a way of telling stories about an event or encounter that has deeply impacted them, such as being surprised by an angry crawfish emerging from murky water, or realizing for the first time how intricate a bee's body really is. Drawing as a process is connected to ecological identity, or the ways in which people understand themselves in relation to the rest of the living world. In my experience, children today are already well aware of the deleterious effects of climate change and mass species extinction. The world they're inheriting is one already diminished, but it's still one made of wild and astonishing things that teach us alongside art and science. The educational experiences that we construct for children today will undoubtedly echo far into the future and influence the next generation of thinkers. The challenges, questions, and decisions that today's children will face in the not so distant future will require them to critically and creatively think and respond. And yet, under this heavy burden, there will still be incredible, vibrant life. And so education needs to encourage children to move with agency and purpose, and also courage and joy. So celebrating children's joyous wonder at the extraordinary strength of ants might seem insignificant, or maybe even trivial when we're faced with an unraveling planet. But I see this moment as the beginnings of a multi-species relationship and of recognizing and listening to a fully animate world. Thank you.
All right, can you help pull up the Menti again?
Hello, everyone. Oh, wow, that was loud. I'm Chris Kokinos. I'm one of the mentors. I will be your MC and will happily carry this microphone around for questions. We have a few minutes and then we'll probably take a little break before our plenary speaker, Winona Duke. So any questions from anyone to any of our fine scholars? Yeah.
If folks are joining us virtually, the instructions are on the screen, but I'm not sure if you can see them. So if you go to menti.com, and then there's the code you can enter, which is 1257-5302. So again, that's menti, MENTI.com and 1257-5302. And you can drop your questions in there.
Awesome, thank you. Thoughts, reactions, questions? Hungry for popcorn?
For the scholar that studied the Scats, how do you deal with finding the diversity of scat that I would assume that you might need for such a problem?
So actually, I usually don't collect much of my own scat. We have a lot of experts that we collaborate with who love to walk around in the desert and bring us lots of scat. But to make sure that we're using the right species, we are able to amplify certain genes and just sequence those to make sure that they are really the species that we're looking for before we include them in anything further. We do have some jaguar scats. We don't have many ocelot samples yet, but we have a lot of samples we're still trying to process to see if we have ocelots. So we're working on it. Yeah, thank you.
Just hold, yeah, that's gonna be the scholar microphone. So yeah, hold on. Other thoughts or questions? Yeah. Oh, okay. I think that's for Leah.
So all those photos are from my first summer field season last year, summer 2021. The Jenga photo I did not take.
Do you play it in the field though, when you're out there?
No,
With
but
the
that
young-
might make it more fun.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Thank you. So let's do the question for Charlotte first. And then you all can just weigh in.
Sure. So the question for me is, how do you deal with fear from participants in EFL? So that's definitely something that you just continue to work with. You aren't going to magically get them to not be afraid, but it's something that you can get people to talk through of what exactly makes them afraid. If it's something related to any action or closeness to a horse. We aren't doing therapy, so we aren't looking at like psychotherapy and trying to analyze why they're deep down, why are you afraid? But obviously everybody's bringing something different to it. And the folks that we are working with in this particular program are volunteers. They're really interested in the program. So in general, they aren't as afraid, though I'm sure that still comes up for people if they aren't familiar with horses. So it's just something that we work through.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like a couple questions for Rachel.
Okay, I will do the longer one first. I work with Explora Science Center and Children's Museum, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it's part of a bigger project that we collaborate with the Agri-Nature Center in the North Valley of Albuquerque, which is a working farm. Although in the past, we've also just gone down to the bosque, the riparian forest, and just explored those areas, and also have paired with Valle de Oro National Wildlife Refuge in the southern part of Albuquerque. As far as the most interesting drawings I've ever seen, I think the most interesting thing about children drawing is it's not really about the images, it's really about the process, and it's a whole body experience. If you have ever had the opportunity to watch a child draw, they're often very vocal and animated. And I think that's the most interesting part, is that they really could care less about the actual image. It's really about the process.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Charlotte.
Oh, yeah. So in general, the resiliency that I refer to is drawing from more educational literatures. It's not dissimilar to how we conceptualize resiliency in ecology, where folks, it's obviously on an individual scale, have a tool set and have experiences that they can draw on in times of crisis to bounce forward instead of just thinking of it as bouncing back. And I know that is also similar in ecology. So it's really how these young folks can develop this capacity to understand what they're going through is temporary, and that they have these experiences that they can then draw on to work through these really tough challenges.
Great. Thank you. How do I scroll up there to get that? Our online audience is tearing it up, so that's great. Awesome. Thank you. So question for Leah.
Okay, do you have a hunch as to if you'll see closely related flowers bloom at the same time, or if it will be the distantly related ones? So I have one summer's worth of data for these questions so far. And what I am seeing very clearly is that for a lot of pairs of species, there is a benefit to co-flowering. So I've found so far that a lot of plants that flower at the same time as others, it is increasing their fruit and seed output. So they are doing better because they're flowering at the same time as other species. The relatedness, there's not so much of a pattern that I've seen yet. It seems to be that the species that flower at the same time as each other, their evolutionary relationships are all over the board. In terms of things that flower at the same time, I haven't looked at that exactly yet. More how that influences the seed output and how many seeds they can produce. So we'll see.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another question for Charlotte, matching horse personalities to the individuals in the program.
Yeah, so of course, there's a huge diversity of horse personalities, but we don't intend to match them. We're still in the beginning research phases where we're working with some of these young participants, and they're helping us figure out what exactly this curriculum is going to look like. So maybe they'll find that having a horse that matches them is really useful, but I think there's also a lot of value in working with a horse that's really dissimilar to you, because that forces you to really think through what communicative strategies you're using. And that's pretty central to this project. So I think it could be a challenge, but I think it's one that people should take up. And then I think there's a question for Allie as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer the question about wildlife crossing bridges. So I don't have a number off the top of my head about how effective they are quantitatively, but I can definitely tell you that they are very effective. Often within the first couple weeks of them being open, you will definitely see animals using them. And I'd also just like to point out, we have wildlife crossing bridges that go over roads, but we also have culverts that go under roads. And culverts are actually even more widely used than bridges. So using both bridges and culverts are really important for increasing connectivity, and animals do readily use those over roads, absolutely.
See, Allie, I have a question for you as well, if you don't mind. Yeah, so I was thinking about the fact that Tucson sort of inherited those corridors, right? Because they're already natural, and the rivers are seasonal, and it's got to be true, and obviously in other places in the Southwest. So how translatable is that? I mean, this is maybe a little bit beyond what, but just thinking about this notion of relation, like how translatable is that to cities of, say, a similar size in a different environmental area, in different bio region?
Yeah, so I would say that if we have cities in the Southwest specifically that are seasonal rivers, they would be able to do things very similar to how Tucson has done it, where they can maintain those riverbeds and allow vegetation to grow in them. For more mesic cities that are outside of the desert, like the pictures that I was showing, personally, I think that it would do just as well to have sort of a buffer zone to allow those floodplains to stay. So even though the river is running all year long, you still have these natural corridors on either side of that river. So instead of building up to the very edge of that water, allow that floodplain to grow, and then the wildlife will use that as a corridor. So in a lot of cities, that's already closed off, but if we can help to renovate land and restore it back to that, then we could restore wildlife corridors to those areas in non-desert cities as well.
Great, thank you. Other questions, comments?
We do have this one, Chris, which looks like everybody could answer.
Yeah,
Most
thank
enjoyable
you.
and insightful interaction with non-science audience.
Yeah, thank you. Who wants to tackle that? So can you talk about an enjoyable and insightful, or maybe enjoyable and or insightful interaction with an audience of non-scientists?
Yeah, so I'm a field biologist, so I'm always wandering around out in the open, and people often stop and ask me what I'm doing. And my favorite interactions are the ones where the locals, the people that live there, can often tell me more about the area than I can tell them. So I have cameras all around the city, and I've been trying to, discern these patterns between wildlife, which wildlife cameras are great for. But if you are a resident that always has tabs on a certain wash, many times the residents living there have a lot more information than I do. And so I really love to talk to residents and gather what insights they have. And maybe they've seen something that I haven't yet, and that could lead me into a very fruitful direction. So those are always my favorite.
So all of my field sites are along a Forest Service road outside of Crested Butte, Colorado. And there's a lot of dispersed camping in the area, and especially over holiday weekends in the summer, there's tons of people out there. And there's one particular camp spot that is right by one of my sites. And last summer, there was a guy who was camping there, and he was there for quite a while, probably 2 weeks. And so every time I went there, he was there. And for the first couple of days, I didn't talk to him. And finally, he asked me what I was doing, and I told him. And then every day I came back, he's like, "How's it going? Like, what are you seeing?" And he was really invested in it. It was really fun to have him there for a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
Okay, I remember mine. So speaking of people feeling like they really know what they're doing and want to share with you their knowledges, that can get a little bit difficult when you're working with people in the horse world, because people have really diverse experiences and some folks have a very particular way of doing things. And so in a particular case that my fellow scholars have heard about, a equine-facilitated psychotherapist was really just ready to shut down some people's ideas of what was actually going on when they were trying to interpret the situation. And that really was a good example that working with people in domains that they feel like they really understand, they think they really understand their social worlds, and they do from their perspective, but a lot of times that can cloud their understanding of how others from different cultural backgrounds are approaching the same situation.
Some of my most enjoyable one is actually just working with kids, although I'm not quite sure when the line is between child and scientist or child and artist, because they bring such new knowledge and ways of looking at things. As we grow up and we become adults, we tend to then get kind of ossified into our ways of doing things, and kids just don't have that yet, and so they bring a very different perspective, and I learn so much just from working with them that totally turns what I thought I had planned is totally on its head, or inside out or whatever, simply just by a small comment that they'll make, or they'll point out something that I have not noticed at all, even though I'm the one who put together these learning materials. They're coming at it from a very different perspective, so it's very insightful.
Natalie?
Yeah, I think mine probably would be an experience I had before grad school, actually. There was a summer camp I was invited to talk to some elementary school age kids about a project I had done in Zimbabwe studying African lion behaviors. And it was a fun opportunity to show pictures to these kids of animals they never would have seen around their own homes in Kentucky, of course, and to help them be able to relate to these animals, as I explained that these cats were very inquisitive. They like to explore their environments, they like to play, and just some of the other behaviors I told them that I observed that they were able to relate with as well. So yeah, I agree. It's very nice sharing our research with kids and seeing what they can make out of it.
Great. Thank you. We have a question about flowers again, it looks like.
Are you seeing an effect of elevation? Why did you select a narrow range of elevation profiles? The first question is absolutely yes. This was one of the first things I found when I was starting to look at my data this fall, that the higher I get, so that lowest site, there's not really a clear pattern of co-flowering leading to more seed production. And the middle elevation, there's sort of a moderate relationship. And the highest elevation site, there's a very tight relationship. very direct relationship between co-flowering and seed production. So yes, absolutely, there is an effect of elevation. And the second question, why did I select this range of elevations? These sites are part of Brian Enquist's long-term study site, and he has been working at the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab since 2003.
And who is Brian Enquist?
Brian Enquist is a professor in the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology department. Yeah, so he has had these sites established for almost 20 years now, and there's actually 6 sites in the range. The lowest one in those 6 is much lower than my lowest one, and the highest one is quite a bit higher than my highest one. So it's a huge range, and it's probably an hour to an hour and a half of driving between getting from the lowest to the highest, which is why I have not had time to be at all 6, but I picked those 3 because they're the most accessible.
Cool, thank you. We're going to check the Zoom chat for any questions here as well. And any last thoughts or questions from the audience here in the room? Although some of you may have been cheating a little bit and doing your questions online. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let's have another round of applause for our speakers. And we've got time for a break, and then let's say 10 minutes, and then come back. And then we'll hear from our next round and our plenary speaker, Winona LeDuc. So thank you so much for being here. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
So welcome back, everyone, from the Carson Scholars presentations. Thank you again for being here in person and on Zoom. Your presentations were all great too, and thank you for sharing all of your work and all of the differences that you do and make in this world. So thank you. For all of you just tuning into the event, we wanted to welcome you to Earth Week 2022. Many voices, one planet, our theme this year. Presented to you by the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences. My name is Mariah Rogers, and I am the co-chair for Earth Week, coming from the School of Geography, Development, and Environment at the University of Arizona. We're coming here from ENR2 today in room lecture hall S107. Before we have our presenter, Winona LeDuc, speak as well. We wanted to give the University of Arizona land acknowledgement statement. We wanted to respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and Yaqui tribes. The university and the people in it are committed to diversity and inclusion and strive to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. Thank you again to the Indigenous peoples and Native nations of whose territories and land we are currently on, and for their longstanding environmental stewardships. To continue our plenary session, we wanted to restate our theme this year, Many Voices, One Planet. We picked this theme because we wanted to acknowledge and celebrate the Earth from all different perspectives and knowledge systems. Earth Week is a time for C students, faculty, and staff, and others from different communities to learn and share knowledge about the Earth. Again, we wanted to thank everyone that was involved in the process of creating Earth Week 2022. This includes faculty, staff, and students from the School of Earth and Environmental Science, specifically Geoscience, HAS, LTRR, ENVS, SNRE, ARES, Carson Scholars, Biosphere 2, and our department, SGDE. Again, special thank you to the other graduate student representatives of Earth Week from all of these different departments and areas. And thank you again to the C's department heads and other committee members for making this all possible. We wanted to specifically thank some individuals as well. John Chorover, Amanda Lucero, Aaron Bouget, Amanda Percy, Liz Cordova, Vicki Henry, Adriana Kelly, and Andrew Comrie, as well as Keisha for setting this all up. And thank you again, Tenzin Yankee, my co-chair for Earth Week. Tonight's plenary session and all the combined Earth Week events would not have been possible without all of you. Next, we will have you enter Menti.com, if you haven't already done so, we use this for our Carson Scholars Program. You can scan the QR code or enter Menti.com and enter the code 12575302. If you would like to participate in the Q&A session, start entering your questions. You can have it open the entire time, but at the end, we will have Megan Nickerson and Jenna Beagle, two of the Earth Week graduate student representatives, asking your questions to Winona LaDuke. Next, I will hand it over to Najoni Tallis, who will introduce Winona LaDuke.
Yat everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Joni Tallis. I'm from Rough Rock, Arizona, currently a PhD student, my first year at the University of Arizona, studying in the Department of Natural Resources Studies. And I'm so happy to be here to welcome you all and also to welcome Winona LaDuke. And here is a slide of just showing some of the photos of her work she has been doing. And so she's a Harvard-educated economist, environmental activist, author, hemp farmer, grandmother, and a two-time former Greenpeace vice president candidate. And she was born in Los Angeles, California on August 18th, 1959 to parents Vincent and Betty LaDuke. Her father, also known as Sun Bear, was a Ojibwe from the White Earth Reservation in Minnesota. She also specializes in rural development, economic, food and energy sovereignty, and environmental justice. Living and working on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota, she leads several organizations, including Honor the Earth, co-founded with the Indigo Girls 28 years ago, Initiative Agriculture Institute, Akin, and Winona's Hemp. In 1994, LaDuke was nominated by Time magazine as one of America's 50 most promising leaders under 40 years old. She was awarded the Thomas Morton Award in 1996, the Anna Bancroft Award for Women's Leadership Fellowship, and Reebok Human Rights Award, which she used to begin the White Earth Land Recovery Project. In 1998, Miss Magazine named her Woman of the Year for her work with Honor the Earth. She has also written extensively on Native American and environmental issues. LaDuke is a former board member of Greenpeace USA and serves as co-chair of the Indigenous Women's Network and North American and Pacific Indigenous Women's Organization. She has also written several books on Indigenous rights, activism, and some of them include The Militarization of Indian Country, 2011, Recovery the Sacred, The Power of Naming and Claiming, and the nonfiction book, All Our Relations, Native Struggles for Land and Life, and several others as well. Personally, she has been such a great inspiration for many tribal communities across the nation. And as for myself, being an Indigenous woman in academia and working within the STEM field, her work as being an activism has really shown that change can happen with the movement of people, with the movement of community. From just these photos I have here, she is a great role model for other young Indigenous women and also just Indigenous communities that it is possible to move into a sustainable world, a sustainable ecosystem, and to have culture and language at the forefront and to really revitalize that setting and also to bring more youth into that arena and to really fight for Indigenous resistance against different pipelines, tar sands, or anything that is going against tribal rights and really advocating for that. And just being able to be here and being able to be at the University of Arizona has really gave me great motivation and also like having to see great articles by Winona LaDuke and reading her books and seeing her speeches and all of that really gave me encouragement to keep going down this path of education because I know the importance it is to get education and go back to one's tribal community because she also done that as a Harvard graduate. And it has really been amazing to see her journey and to see the impact she has been doing for tribal communities, Indigenous communities, and being that voice in those spaces. So I hope one day I could also be like Winona LaDuke. So it's really awesome having her here today to speak with every one of you and to really share her story and to share the amazing work that she has been doing for Indigenous communities. And it's a great start for Earth Week and all the events to come. So I really appreciate getting the privilege to introduce her. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy the photos and really nice to see you and meet you in Nonola Duke.
Well, miigwech. Thank you so much for the gracious introduction and for letting me be with you today. Can you all hear me okay? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I can't tell in the system here sometimes, you know, but I'm sorry I cannot be with you. I hope one day to go visit you down there in your territory, but I'm grateful to be able to visit with you here remotely. I'm sitting here at my hemp farm. You can see one of my old guys behind me. That's Nagani Benes. He's one of our leaders here. And sitting here on my hemp farm just south of the White Earth Reservation. And in my language, you say, Ani Nindawe Magadaduk, which means hello, my relatives. Benesi Quain Jinakaz, Makwando Dam, and Bear Clan, and Gababani Kog, Ishkaniganing, Minogishigat, and Minozikwa, and Good Springs here, and I'm grateful to be with you. You know, as I reflected on the name of your conference, I thought about a long time ago, Minwanja, we have a treaty that we signed. And this treaty was signed, it was recorded in 1706. This treaty that was recorded was a treaty and that it had been signed before, but it was reaffirmed in 1706. It's called the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. And it was a treaty between the Anishinaabe people, my people, and the Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois Confederacy. And that treaty was an agreement that was made between our people, and it was reflected in a wampum belt, And the treaty and the wampum is called the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. And what that treaty says is that we all eat from one dish. In this case, they were talking about the Ohio River Valley, shared territory, Great Lakes of the Anishinaabe people and the Iroquois Confederacy. And so we said, we all eat from one dish, and therefore we should take care of the same dish. And then they said one spoon, which is when you are a relative in a lot of our ceremonies, I don't know about your ceremonies, but often they feed you and they feed you in one spoon. Now, in the time of COVID, we have like a bunch of spoons or something. But the idea is that you share one spoon and you are relatives. And that is like a feasting and ceremonial tradition in our territory. And so as I think about this time as one planet, you know, all of this is the same set of teachings of that we all have to work together, put our minds together to make a new future, a good future for our children. And so it is indeed, you know, old teaching of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee that this is one dish and one spoon. So as I reflected on what I want to talk to you about, I'm going to talk to you a lot about what we do. But I start with this moment in time that we are in, and you know, where I am. This here is a picture. I believe you can see my screen. Is that correct, or I do need to share it now? Oh yeah, better share. This is some art from my territory. Now I'm gonna make a leap of faith that you can see it. Participants can now see your screen. Okay. Now, this is from art from my territory. This artist is named Votan. He lives down there in your neck of the woods. But Votan made it a picture of a water protector, which is what I am. I'm a water protector. This is an Anishinaabe woman, and she is not missing. She's not disappearing anytime soon. She's about 30 feet wide and 40 feet tall. She's in downtown Duluth on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue. And this is, you know, who we are as Indigenous people today in our territory, and the reemergence of an Indigenous voice and Indigenous presence. So I just want to talk about this in this moment in time. And, you know, as I reflect on where we're at now and where we're going, I think about the, let me see how to move this to the next one. Let me see, I'm having a little trouble with my, here we go. I want to talk about a little bit remembering who we are and where we come from. You know, I like to talk about making America great again. And this is when America was great, when there was 10,000 varieties of corn. Many of them developed in the Southwest and up to our territory. Those varieties were not developed by Monsanto or DuPont or, you know, any GMOs. Those were us. We developed all those corn varieties. America was great when there were 50 million buffalo, the single largest migratory herd in the world that thundered across the northern plains, and the complete biodiversity that exists in 250 different species of grass where you never have to have a fossil fuel economy. And I think about that because today in the same place where we once had 50 million buffalo, we have about 28 million cattle. And those cattle require an entire fossil fuel economy and all kind of oil, all kind of feeds, and they don't live well in the winter. And in climate change, you're going to need a more resilient animal, like maybe a buffalo. That'd do good. But I talk about, you know, when America was great, the skies were darkened by passenger pigeons and you could drink the water from every creek and river. You know, that is what you could do. And that's when America was great. And, you know, as Indigenous people, we don't have historical amnesia or ecological amnesia. Ecological amnesia is when you forget that there used to be buffalo there, or maybe you forget there used to be a forest there. You know, here where we live in our territory, we still live where the wild things are. And it turns out on a worldwide scale, Indigenous people live where the wild things are. We are about 4% of the world's population, but we represent about 75% of the world's biodiversity. What does that mean? That means our reservations, our homelands on a worldwide scale are the places where there's still frogs, or the places where I live, where there's bear and deer and badgers and wolverines and wolves and moose, all kind of guys, and wild rice. This is wild rice. That's what you're looking at in that picture. That's me and Don Goodwin on Lower Rice Lake on the White Earth Reservation. And that looks like a pasture or grass, but that's a lake. And where we live, all you got to do is take care of your water, take care of your rice. You know, your rice will come every year in succession. It's a perennial. Creator gave us a very good deal. And right now is spring. Spring is Seguin Bidago Shinoma, and in it is the sugar bush, maple syruping. And that is what we also have, is all you got to take care of your forest and you can make sugar every year from a forest, make sugar from a tree and food that grows on the water. Now I tell you this because our prophecies talk about these times, and our prophecies talk about, you know, our worlds of birth, death, and rebirth, one world after another. Our prophecies talk about these times in terms of fires, is what they said. They refer to the time of the first fire, you know, way long ago. They talked about, you know, our people and how we lived and different things we had done and mistakes we made. I always want to say that because no society has a monopoly on botching things up. We're human. We botch things up. That's why we have all those trickster stories. You know, we have Nana Boujou stories. I still talk about him because it says snow here. We can talk about him when there is snow. And we have snow. We have water and snow here, a lot of it in my yard right now. But you know, humans are that way. We mess things up. They talked about the fires that would come. They talked about people who would come, and some of them would be good and some of them would be bad. And welcome to colonialism. There were some good white guys that came, and there's a lot of rotten ones, you know. No Indian person needs a lecture on that one. You know, then they talked about how a lot of our things would be stolen. And we didn't have a word for anthropologists, but that's what they're talking about. The guys that stole our villages and our bodies, all our sacred items, you know, all that is a part of those prophecies. Well, those prophecies talked about the time of the seventh fire. And in that time, they said we would have a choice between two paths. One path they said was well-worn, but it was scorched. And the other path they said was not well-worn, and it would be green. And that'd be our choice upon which path to embark. And I feel like that's pretty much where we're all exactly at. You know, at this moment in time where we got a choice between a scorched path and a green path, and no place like Arizona is a perfect place to talk about it, with the, you know, decline of the coal industry, the mothballing of big coal-fired generators and large water, you know, removal, a lot of fossil fuels, a lot of scorched earth policy in the Southwest. You know, I always think about like Las Vegas. That's like a crazy place, you know, for all the energy that goes into it. But you know, in the time of the scorched earth, we're told we have a choice between one path well-worn and scorched. The other path is green. These two characters in history, or figures in history, Sitting Bull and Custer, in many ways really exemplify, you know, the conflict between the two world paths. But, you know, you don't need a big lecture on it. Welcome to climate change. You know, we're in a time of catastrophes of biblical proportions. catastrophes of biblical proportions. That's actually what it is. You know, you got fires to the west, the entire west coast on fire. You got, you know, polar ice caps melting to the north, storms to the south, you know, of unbearable proportions of winds and hurricanes. And then you have political disasters to the east. You know, we could just talk about Russia. So, you know, biblical proportions and then a pandemic on top of it. We're all living in it. So we know, you know, and we also know that these are times we are told that, you know, things are going to get more crazy. And I think about that because why? Because I'm old. And I live, you know, I had the privilege of hanging around a lot of older people, and they talked about this time. I remember the Hopi prophecies, you know, Thomas Banyaka. I used to hang out with my father, and he used to talk about the Hopi prophecies of the web in the sky. You know, none of us knew what that was, but here we are, World Wide Web. Welcome, World Wide Web. You know, we talked about, you know, these scorched earth, and I don't know who the plan is for climate change, but this is some expensive stuff. No tribe, no state, no city, no municipality has a plan for climate change related disasters. And, you know, what we are seeing now with the pandemic is equally that. I like what Arundhati Roy is an Indian writer from India, and she talks about pandemic as portal. Pandemic as portal. She said, in the history of the world, pandemics have always forced societies to change. This one is no different. She said it's a portal between one world and the next. That's what she said, a portal between one world and the next. And in that portal, we see that she has, you know, she says, she asks the question, are you going to walk through that portal? Are you going to walk through clean? Or are you going to walk through and carry your dirty rivers, your data banks, your avarice, your prejudice, your hatred? Are you going to walk through clean? That's really part of what we've learned in the pandemic. You know, Americans, and we all think we're, you know, smartest people in the world, humans. Turns out we aren't. Turns out, you know, we're lucky. You know, we survived this one pandemic, but turns out we don't know what we're doing. You know, what we know is that we're not following our instructions. That's we know. And the consequences of that are these kind of changes. And so in the time of the pandemic, when a lot of things were closed down, turns out our not flying around meant that the air got cleaner. Turns out that we learned things. Oh, hold on one second here. Hold on. Michelle, my dog is walking around outside. Can you get her in? I apologize. I got a farm dog and I don't want her to go on the road. I just saw her there. Okay. So crisis is opportunity, but it's also crazy. So this is where we're at. You know, this is Standing Rock in 2016. This is a woman facing a pretty heavily militarized set of corporate security and public security and all kind of police, $38 million worth of police intended to, that's right, repress indigenous people trying to protect our water. Now, the reason I'm showing this photo is that I want to talk about addiction. What do I want to talk about? Look, I got addicts in my family. We all do. And addiction's kind of a drag. Oh, this my dog has appeared. This is my dog. Okay, she is. She was out by the road. Thank you. Okay. Oh, addiction is really a drag. You know, addicts make just bad decisions. Is that a fair thing to say? Look, we know this. This is not this is not an unknown fact. But my point is that we're in fossil fuel addiction. Fossil fuel addiction is what we've been living in. You know, I spent my whole life in the fossil fuel era, and looks like crazy right now. This looks like crazy. Looks like they go to war for it. Looks like they exhibit extreme behavior like addicts. Like, can't get your fix. Price of gas goes up. Let's just go frack. Bust up the bedrock of Mother Earth. 602 chemicals protected by that federal law is secret, and assume that what goes down will not come up. You know. Or maybe you just want to go 20,000 feet into the ocean and get some oil. See if that works out for you until you get like Deepwater Horizon or maybe the tar sands, you know, just crazy stuff. And then when you can't get your way with your oil, this is what you do to people. You repress them. That's late stage addiction behavior, violent behavior. And it's all about racism in this case. Look, You know, let's just be honest about this. Dakota Access Pipeline originally was supposed to go north of the city of Bismarck. Except for who got it? You know, who got it? Indian people got it, you know? So this is what racism looks like, and late stage fossil fuel addiction, and kind of a frenzy of crazy that is going on out there. And I'm just saying, look, I lived my whole life in the fossil fuel era. I want a graceful exit. I want to move along. I want to move along. I want a graceful transition to the next economy. And the Navajo Nation is one of the keys to that. You know, you have so much regulatory, you have so much infrastructure. Let's make something cool, you know? But instead, what we got is this crazy stuff. This is Standing Rock, okay? You know, when you full on repress a bunch of people who are trying to protect their water, but not unique. You know, this one, I really like these horse guys. These are my, you know, some of my nephews out there. All right. Oh, this is line 3. This is what I just went through. This is Enbridge, not the Energy Transfer Partners. This is Enbridge. This is a Canadian pipeline company and they actually finance the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's the largest pipeline company in the world, and they push tar sands. That's the dirtiest oil in the world. Hear me? The dirtiest oil in the world. You know, you got to like basically take sludge and figure out how to put it in a pipe and shove it down through my territory. Well, I fought him for 8 years in a regulatory system, and I'm here to report the system has been compromised. The Enbridge Corporation controls the state of Minnesota. What do I mean? They jammed our regulatory process. They got approval for a pipeline that should have never been approved. They burned our rivers. 27 rivers were burned by Enbridge. They stole 5 billion gallons of water, and they they busted our aquifers, you know, losing 220 million gallons of water. In one of them, they don't even know if that spill's done. You know, we have no idea what's going on. And what am I saying? That's criminal. But, you know, the thing is that, you know, they also militarized our state. This is the use of the state. They spent $7.1 million paying for the state of Minnesota police to repress its citizens to protect a Canadian multinational trying to put a private pipeline across the North Territory, Indian Territory. That's what they did. They, you know, so the state DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and the State Highway Patrol, $7 million to repress people like me. This is a driveway at the property that we have in Hubbard County. Driveway that I have an easement to. Tara Hauska and I own the easement to this driveway. And one day Tara Hauska's walking out a driveway, and the cops won't let her out the driveway. They wouldn't let her out. Anyway, so I'm just trying to point out that this is kind of a prostitution of a political process for a Canadian multinational. And it just feels a lot like, wow, being an indigenous person in El Salvador, maybe Honduras, where Canadian multinationals just kill you there. They just assassinate you, you know, but that's what it's like in northern Minnesota. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. This is the people they're repressing. What are we? A bunch of women in skirts in the river, you know? This is us, kids, women. We're just trying to protect our water. That's all we are. We're not criminals, we're water protectors. And here is my arrest, or one of them. I have charges in 3 counties in northern Minnesota. Me and 1,000 other people charged as water protectors, you know? And I feel like who should be charged is a multinational corporation that fracked my water, stole my water, contaminated my water, and brutalized all of these Indian people in northern Minnesota and a lot of non-native allies. So here I am protecting the Shell River with 6 of my sisters. We're called the Shell River 7. And we are facing a line of police, and we're about to be taken in. And some of those are my grandkids, and some of those are my nephews, and they're on our horses, you know? So what I'm saying is, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? You know, we act like addicts, man. And that just seemed like a super bad idea to be acting like addicts, you know? So I'm ready to move along, but this is what this corporation is doing. It's not just my problem. They just got in the Clearbrook to Superior portion, and now they're trying to go across Wisconsin and into Michigan, where they have old pipelines there, like put in the 1960s, almost 60-year-old pipes. And this one here is on the Bad River Reservation, and they've been running through Bad River for a number of years, since the 60s. And you know, what am I saying here? This is some old pipe, but I'm talking to people who know about this. Dene people, other people have a lot of old pipes on their land. And you know what? My belief is that if you made a mess, a company, you should clean up your mess. Bad River asked them to move out You know, they don't even have an easement anymore. And this Canadian multinational is trespassing on the Bad River Reservation. And now they're proposing instead to go all the way around Bad River and that really big pipeline there, you know. It's just a crazy thing. And then they're proposing to go, you know, further this along to Michigan. And then look at all those spills, you know. So basically, I feel like we're being held hostage by oil. That's why, you know, it's kind of like late stage addiction. We're a bunch of junkies and dealers are making public policy and passing laws. This is their line under the Straits of Mackinac. Got hit by an anchor. Not good. 60-year-old pipe under the Straits of Mackinac. Fifth of the world's water. A fifth of the world's water. Did y'all hear me say that? That's what's important, you know. This is about that. And then there's these other mines that they're proposing for our territory. So there's a mineral mine. I mean, this is a unobtainium for a green economy. And then there's this one, which is a mill project. So why am I telling you this story? I just realized that this is probably not that, well, I guess this is what you get this. I don't know how to make it into a slideshow. Let me see here. Okay. Anyway, take a breath. This is the crazies that we are in. And then just remember that this is in this moment of time, you were placed here, like me. And the Creator put us here in this moment of time with all of these challenges around us and said, let's do this. Let's fix things up. And that's our opportunity as Indigenous people to provide the leadership for a just transition. And what I think is, I believe that we are the ones that need to do that, because I feel like most of the ideas we see that come, carbon sequestration pipelines, shoot nuclear waste to the moon, you know, Tesla, these are all like ideas that are, you know, continue the same trajectory of a linear way of thinking. And what we need to do, according to our traditions and our instructions, is to go to the green path. So I want to talk about what that path looks like and why we as Native people need to provide leadership, and why I'm talking to y'all, because this is our time to do the right thing. So this is me harvesting wild rice with my grandson on Deguns last year on Shell Lake. That's up the road. You know, first of all, honor your earth, protect your biodiversity, protect the wild places and live them. Don't just go look at them, live them. Reaffirm your prayer. Reaffirm your instructions, harvest your food, and put your good thoughts out there. Be grateful, because the Creator gave us something great. And then, this is my story. This is the farm I'm at now. And during the pandemic, most of those guys came to live with me. At various times, all of those kids lived with me, as a matter of fact. And I still got 3 of those kids with me, and that little girl's, that's my granddaughter, Wasabik, Lillian Wasabik. All right, so this is where I live. And what happened in the pandemic is that all these boys, young men, Indian men from Red Lake and White Earth, and I think that one guy in the black shirt is from Sisseton maybe, but they all moved into my farm with me. And I said to myself, this is a time to remember to teach our next generation how to farm and how to live, you know, much closer to the way of life that we need. And so this is where I live. We got local. And one of the teachings of the pandemic, you know, it's a funny thing to talk to Dene people about getting local, because a lot of people already live this way. But, you know, just stay put and take care of your land. So we started working on agriculture there. This is for, what you call this, regenerative agriculture. This is our girl team. We farm with horses and we farm by hand. And size does matter. You should only have farms of a certain size if you want to have a quality of farming operations, you know. And here's our horse farming, one of our horse farming operations. This is our team of ponies putting out a cornfield. Fabulous. And I was just out looking at my horses just before I came to see you on this Zoom, and figuring out who's going to plow what and how we're going to do, you know. Very exciting times ahead. This is our potatoes, our agrobiodiversity. You know, so try to cut the petroleum out of your agriculture system. Go back, be simple. You know, we are pre and post petroleum agriculture, indigenous people. We know how to do this stuff. You know, a hoe is a garden implement. A hoe is a garden implement. And, you know, learn how to grow food again. My father used to stay this stuff and, you know, long time ago. I think about it now, but these are potatoes from the Peruvian Potato Museum. Excuse me, I think it's a Peruvian Potato Museum. Anyway, why are we talking about potatoes? Because they're indigenous to the Western Hemisphere. And there's 900 varieties. And if the Irish potato famine taught us anything, it should have taught us that you want to have biodiversity, not a monocrop. Well, it turns out that climate scientists are studying these potato varieties to see if they are able to, you know, how they adapt in climate change. And that's a really important thought because that's what we need. And we need to figure out what's going to grow as the climate changes. While we fight, resist every fossil fuel project and move, figure out what's going to grow. So a couple of years ago, we grew 17 varieties of potatoes. Now I'm growing like, just to be honest, I'm probably growing 5 varieties right now. But I prefer purple potatoes, but the fingerlings, very good. And some potatoes we had very good success with during the climate change. You know, last year we had the worst drought in the history of the state of Minnesota. That's when they gave away 5 billion gallons of water to Enbridge. Worst drought in the history of Minnesota. Criminal. And then we need to transform our food system. Look, grow cool stuff, but then remember, eat less. Don't be pigs. And quit importing stuff from halfway around the country. Try to get more local. You ain't going to get any wheat from Russia, so get over it. Figure out how to grow what you need here. And quit wasting. You know, get a cyclical system. Like we have goats, so we feed waste to goats, but I just try to not have too much waste. And then grow hemp. This is what I need. This is the most exciting thing that I do. Now, you guys hung out with me and, you know, I fight bad guys most of my life and, you know, not my gig really. I'd really just rather grow hemp and be happy. Well, look, this is their ticket. This is hemp. This is, I'm a fiber hemp grower. Now, this is what she looks like. Fiber hemp. Now, this is, I got a couple sons in the middle and I got relatives, partners, brothers, family around there. This is our family's crop. Okay. This is our 2015 hemp crop. Now, this is fiber hemp. This is fiber hemp. And this is the new green revolution. That's what I'm talking about. And why am I talking about that? Because this stuff can bioremediate. It's one of the best carbon sinks that exists because it grows so rapidly. See how tall that stuff is? Grows up like this, and when it grows up like this, it sucks down all of that carbon into the plant, which is where you want the carbon is on the earth and not in the air. And then similarly, it goes down deep, and so it's very good at bioremediating. This plant can heal the earth, and what we need to do is grow it out at scale. So I'm starting here on my little reservation in northern Minnesota, and I've been working on trying to get to fabric. Now, why am I trying to get to fabric? Because the word canvas comes from cannabis. The word canvas comes from cannabis. Isn't that the most amazing thing you ever heard? So what does that mean? All those tents, all those tarps, all those sails, that's some cannabis. That's some cannabis. Hemp has the potential to transform the materials economy. So think about hemp versus in carbon. And, you know, 4 billion trees annually. Hemp versus trees. You know, why would you clear cut when you could just grow hemp? Right? And cotton, like I'm wearing cotton today. I'm not in my usual hemp outfit, but look, hemp, cotton uses a huge amount of water to grow. And what don't we have in this planet? Extra water to throw away and throw full of chemicals. Cotton's like 1/4 of the world's chemicals and 4% of the world's agriculture. And it turns out that hemp does not need a lot of water. It likes its feet dry. It likes good nutrients and its feet dry. So it doesn't do well in irrigation. I'm in. You know, this is our future. Now, this is, of course, hemp insulation. Wait, I have to show you something. Oh, right. Where did your instructor go? Ah, behold, hemp insulation. Do you see me? I put this on my face. Why am I showing this? Because this replaces fiberglass, and you didn't put fiberglass anywhere near you. This is 97% hemp. This is made by hemp wool. And what I really want to do is work with Navajo rug weavers or Navajos and take extra sheep wool and figure out how to spin it into this to make insulation that has like an R28 value. Did you hear me? Very good. And isn't toxic. What if we tried to get petrochemicals out of construction? You can do hempcrete. You can make hemp insulation. My gosh, you can do anything out of hemp. You can transform the materials economy. That's why I call it the new green revolution. And that's really a significant transformation, because what if we got fossil fuels out of our materials economy? What if we quit with the plastics? What if we quit with the single-use containers? And what if we quit putting fossil fuels in all our construction and made like hemp wood? That's the future. So that's what I want to, see. And here is some of our hemp fiber. And this actually is Navajo rug weaving. Here, this is a Navajo artisan rug that is made with 40% hemp and 60% Chero sheep fiber. And the weft, what is the one? That's the one you want for the hemp, because it's super strong. The tensile strength is 3 times that of cotton. I don't know what it is compared to wool, but that's the kind of future you need if you're going to have like really long longevity in your textiles. You could do that too. All right. And then there's this. This is something that in the Dane community, y'all down there, you're all techie and stuff, but check this out, man. Okay, so hemp batteries are very powerful, and hemp supercapacitors are also very powerful. Now, this is a little bit out of my league, but we've been working with these guys. Of hemp. The thing about the bast fiber of hemp, which is, let me just try to explain. Oh, here's a better picture of it. Okay. Over here, this here is hemp stock. And in there is, there's the stock, and then there's the fiber as in the outside and inside is what you make hemp hurd out of for hempcrete and such. But this fiber here, when you burn this somehow, you turn a biochar, and the biochar, because of hemp's super ability to absorb carbon, it turns it into a very good receptacle for energy and for electricity and for conducting electricity.
I don't think we can.
I don't understand the full beauty of it, but what I do know is that hemp has the ability to transform the economy, and I'm in. And this is my new green revolution photo. And this is me in my hemp field a few years ago. I look like a hippie in the 60s. I want to say I was a hippie in the 60s, but I was a little young for that. But look, my neighbors said that I had noxious weeds in my yard and noxious weeds. And I went in my yard and I said, oh, the 9-foot tall hemp plants. Is that your noxious weeds? So very excited about my hemp crop that's going to grow here on the White Earth Reservation this year. And oh my gosh, then there's this solar. Now, I really like talking about this solar because this is what we do here on White Earth. Now, I'm telling you this story, and a lot of you might be Indigenous students from elsewhere. It doesn't really matter, but I'm telling you these stories because we're doing this in my community. And my feeling is if we could do it, then anybody could do it. That's what I feel like. I feel like that we as an Indigenous community have this really tremendous, pride in the work that we're doing here. And I feel like what we're doing is something that other communities could do too. So a few years ago, we started manufacturing these solar thermal panels. Now, what am I talking about? This is our manufacturing team. It was a couple of years ago, but a couple of those guys aren't with us. They've done other jobs, but this is basically, my son is the real tall one on the first one in on the right, most tall one guy there. And then there's another 2 sons down in the middle. That's my son too. But look, this is our 8th Fire Solar, and we manufacture these panels that are known as solar thermal panels. This is us manufacturing them. And basically what they do is you put them on the south side of a wall. Here's a picture of them. And that on the south side of a wall, it absorbs the heat. Like this time of year, super warm inside because of these solar thermal panels. And when that happens, it gets warm, it gets hot on the outside, and there's like this box, it's like 8 inches or something like that. Well, you can see it there. And then then the sun gets in there and it warms it up. And when it hits like 90 degrees, it blows with a fan inside. You can do that on solar. But why am I showing this? Because you can reduce your heating bill by 25%. You can reduce your heating bill by 25% if you put these solar panels on. Now, this is really important for communities like high desert communities and our community, because it's cold as heck, but still sunny. It's cold as heck, but still sunny. And so if you could reduce your heating bill by 20% or 25%, you definitely want to do that. 8th Fire Solar. And we think that this kind of technology would be really good in the Southwest and high desert Colorado Plateau communities. And I'd really love to see it roll out there. So I'm just saying, 8th Fire Solar, you can look us up online. We're just getting ready to grow out. And then this is, I'm not sure this is the Kayenta Solar project, I think. So I just want to point out that it is possible to transform the economy. And what we got to do is just do it. And particularly now that Waheela Johns is down there at the Department of Energy, I think she worked on this project and some of the other Navajo solar projects. We have some excellent allies, and super potential for both wind and solar. And certainly in the Southwest, there's a massive amount of electrical generation infrastructure from bad energy projects historically that now could be adapted for renewables, But I want to say that, there's really no need to do all of the renewables. What is this chart saying? I like to use this chart because basically this says we waste about 60% of our power. And that's our problem. We waste energy. Energy services, 32% is what gets through, but jeepers, the rest of that energy between point of origin and point of consumption, that stuff, Lawrence Livermore Labs is who did this study, that's wasted. And so you really don't want to try to meet present energy demand if it's that inefficient. You want to cut demand, and you want to look at a myriad and a collection of power sources, including local solar, solar thermal, geothermal, and other sources of energy in order to have heat and energy security in our communities. And I'm telling you this because this is our experience. With climate change, there will be more disasters and more grids will go down. And I'll tell you what, if Texas had had our solar thermal, we would have been in good shape down in Texas. But no, they don't listen to anyone in Texas, All right. So then here is the next solution. This is what you need in the Southwest. This is called an electric train. Have you heard of an electric train? Oh my God. The thing is this, I don't need to give you a long talk about the difference between electric car and diesel powered vehicle, but go with this. A gas-powered combustion engine. Gas-powered combustion engine is about 16% efficient. Did you hear me say that? It's 16% efficient. That's the craziest thing I ever heard. And an electric engine is 65% efficient. There's like 100 moving parts versus 1,000 moving parts. And every one of those moving parts, I think it's like laws of thermodynamics, is going to lose more energy. Well, so the most efficient way to move stuff around this country is not by trucks and trailers, but by train. And the most, because just think about this, rubber on the road versus metal on metal. Which you think is having less friction? Which you think is more efficient? Why, that'd be a train. I forget if it's 3 or 4 times more efficient to do this transportation. So that's what I'm saying. That's what a Green New Deal needs to look at. Build some essential infrastructure and then power it on renewables. That's what this is. This is called solutionary rail. Solutionary rail, and the idea. And what it does is it powers on renewables all of these solar and all of these train systems that are in the southwestern United States or wherever. But we don't do any of that here because, oh, that's right, we're America. So, we're in a situation where what we see is that we don't have a train that arrives in a timely manner. Most places, passenger trains. I know Albuquerque, a friend of mine just took a train there, but what's my point? We have 1% of electric trains, in other countries, more evolved countries, like most countries who are more evolved. India, I've been on electric trains in India. We just need to catch ourselves up and build some train systems that make sense. And so that's like big pictures, that's what we need. The solutions are not like, they're individuals, they're communities, and then they're aggregated to larger regional and national and international solutions. So look, this is my village. We painted this 2 years ago. This is my cousin Terry's painting on the south side or north side of a house in a housing project. Now, every tribe, I don't know if every tribe, I haven't been to every reservation, but pretty much everybody has a HUD housing project that looks like this, a bunch of pastel colored blocks in the middle of the house with no trees. Welcome to Indian country, could be anywhere. This is Pine Point. So we decided that if you were going to live in a bunch of 50 or 60-year-old houses built in the war on poverty and no one was going to fix them, we put some solar panels on them and we paint them up. So make life beautiful. Make life beautiful. That's all I want to say, do your best and start somewhere. Now, the rest of the story is really about what the solutions are. I told you some pictures here and, told you the mechanics of a just transition. Or in that case, we would call it like lighting the fire, lighting the eighth fire. We're told to make a choice between two paths, one well-worn and scorched and one green. We're told to do that. And we're told to do that in the time of the seventh fire to light the eighth fire. So I'm just giving you the instructions to the best of my ability. And our story is really, I think, your story. It's everybody's story. And communities can make a difference. What is this picture here? This is a picture at the Port of Duluth. This is my favorite port in the country. My port, Duluth. This is wind turbine parts coming into the Port of Duluth. Wind turbine parts, they're coming in from Germany. And what is with this? So say you're one of the largest energy markets in the world and you don't actually make any of your stuff here. In fact, half your stuff's probably on a barge, sitting in line, trying to get in LA. We outsource most of our economy, most of our manufacturing. Multinational corporations moved it elsewhere so they could get cheap labor, bid it out to China so somebody can make a profit. Well, you know what I think? I think if you want to rebuild America, you better build some of your stuff here. And how about wind turbine and solar parts? Let's just do that. Let's start making a real economy here. I'm interested. I'm ready to sign up. Last couple of pictures. Look, all I can say is every day I pray hard and try to do better. These are complex times, but not only did the Creator put us here and say, this is your time, do your best. That's how I feel every day. I feel like I work for the swans on my lake. I work for my horses. Got a lot of horses. I work for all them, that's my job in life. But also I work for the water. I'm a water protector. These are some pictures by Dr. Emoto. He passed away, but he studied water crystals. I never really thought about it. I remember snowflakes. I see snowflakes, but it turns out all water has a different picture, has a different crystal. And water that is contaminated doesn't look as great as water that is like symmetrical and pure. And so I believe that it is really, really important for us to pray to our water and to pray and be grateful. Because if you look, the picture in the bottom, you see Fujiwara Dam before offering a prayer and Fujiwara Dam after offering a prayer. And I feel like what we need to do is always have faith and pray. Pray to our water and be grateful, and do our best, because we need some divine intervention. And aside from that, let us be grateful for water, because she is life. Last couple of thoughts. Look, this is Evo Morales. He was the president of Bolivia for a long time, until I think it's called the lithium coup by Elon Musk a few years ago to get the lithium of the country. I think they did a movie on that, Skylark or something like that. It was one of the, James Bond movies. But anyway, look, the rights of nature, that's what we're talking about here. And in 2008, Ecuador declared the rights of Pachamama, the rights of Mother Earth, as a part of their constitution, saying that the rights of Mother Earth's rights should supersede the rights of multinational corporations. And the Mother Earth had a right to regeneration, rebirth, clean water, be free of contamination. That was adopted by Bolivia as well. In 2010, they adopted the rights of Mother Earth in Bolivia. And then Wanganui River in 2017 or 2016, I believe, was adopted by New Zealander Aotearoa. The river was recognized as having a right to exist. Guardians were appointed for the Maori Iwi, the Maori people, and I believe Pakea, a non-native person, was also designated to recognize and to support, be a guardian ad litem for the river. In the Ho-Chunk Nation in 2018, adopted the rights of nature as a part of their constitution. And in my tribe, 2019, White Earth Anishinaabe adopted the rights of wild rice as a part of our constitution. You know, the law doesn't change unless you change it. The Nez Perce adopted the rights of this Snake River, and the Yurok tribe recognized the rights of the Klamath River. Both of those rivers need dams removed, and both of those rivers are having dams removed. Last year in 2021 in August, my tribe filed suit against the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources for violating the rights of wild rice. They have. They've done a crime against nature and the crime against all of us. And in December of 2021, the Ecuadorian Constitutional Court overturned the mining permits of a Canadian and an Ecuadorian mining corporation to mine in a protected area, saying that the rights of Mother Earth superseded the rights of the corporation and that the water and the land should be protected. That's the kind of laws we need. And that's the kind of system we need that has a cyclical economy and that honors and is an earth-based economy. That's an indigenous economy. So, you know, in closing, I want to thank you for your time. Say that deconstructing colonialism or decolonization is a process. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and heal. Let us heal. Let us heal. Let us invest in our next generation. These are my retirement plan. You know, these women are my retirement plan, and as are all of you. You know, you're a bunch of young people with great leadership ahead of you and great responsibilities. And you know, this is our time. This is our time to make things right with our Mother Earth. Miigwech, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to open up for some questions.
Is there anything you're particularly looking forward to in this new year now that it's spring has come?
Well, we just did a maple sugaring and syruping. I've been on that for, we tapped, and that's been pretty cool. And so we'll be knowing how much syrup we're going to get here, working really hard, tromping through the woods. And then I'm working super excited about the hemp spring season, coming up with a plan for all of my various crops. I'm going to try to grow some Hopi sunflowers to see if I can dye my hemp. All kind of interesting things. So super excited about the seeds. Super excited about the future.
Anyone in the audience have a question that we can just repeat to her on the phone? Yeah.
I'm curious if she knows how many farmers are converting to hemp. It seems like such, so many.
Winona, do you know how many farmers are converting to hemp growing, or like what is your community like?
Well, there's no clear market. I mean, I showed you this really cool installation, right? This is a nascent economy because hemp was criminalized until 2014. And so the rest of the world was doing cool hemp stuff, but here in North America, we're just like so far backwards behind. So people grew hemp and lost their butts. A lot of people are just trying to make CBDs and waiting for legalization and just gonna make, like a lot of cool stuff that's a medicine or whatever, all of that. But my point is that, I'm trying to organize maybe to get 200, 500 acres of hemp growing this year or next year. I'm gonna commit to trying to get 100 acres in, but by next year, I think I'm trying to get 500 to 1,000 acres in the region so we can actually build an industry of tribal hemp. So what we're organizing is the Intertribal Hemp Cooperative. That's what I'm working on, because I don't want to grow it all. And what I want is that tribes, like, you know, we have a lot of land in the Northern Territories up here, and a lot of that is under absentee leasing by non-Indians. I mean, everybody knows this story of checkerboarded, and you got half your reservation is leased out to non-Indian ranchers. Well, what if we could create an industry that would be an organic value-added product that would secure both carbon and also allow you to be the kind of people that could make hemp insulation for travel housing and for everybody else? That's the industry we're working to develop, and that's, you know, about 2 years out. But I'm just trying to get the seeds this year. We purchased seeds. I got seeds from the Czech Republic, and I got kind of Canadian seeds. But you know what? We also have 71 seed varieties we're starting to grow out that are Russian, and I think tribes should own their own seeds. That's what I think. So anyway, I'm just like super excited about the hemp economy, and you guys should look at our stuff at Anishinaabe Agriculture and Winona's Hemp. I'm going to a big hemp conference in Denver on Wednesday. I'm super excited. For my 4th time there. It's kind of like hemp Disneyland. Oh my God. Anyway, NOCO is what it's called. It's like a big hemp show.
Great, thank you. We have an online question. What guidance do you have in developing working relationships with Indigenous communities, working with these communities as scientists trained in Western learning systems, sorry?
I run a pretty tough ship up here. I don't know what to say. You know, we have all kind of people coming in, and, you know, generally we've had a hard time with the University of Minnesota, but now I'm working, you know, I'm trying to keep out building a relationship with the University of Minnesota over my hemp, you know, possibly, but they can't own any of the seeds, you know. So I'm working on, actually, I need to hire an attorney that'll work specifically on some of these contracts and the protection of Indigenous intellectual property and Indigenous plant varieties. So, you know, we've had good experience. You know, right now I'm working with hydrologists on protecting our water. University of Minnesota honors program hydrologists, and, you know, I've explained to them that my, you know, understanding of hydrology is as different, you know, has a lot of different facets that they might not know about, you know, like our teachers. And so they listen pretty good, because they can see with all their science that they actually didn't know what was going on when they put in the Enbridge pipeline, you know, because all their studies didn't indicate what, you know, they not only didn't follow their instructions, but in addition to that, their studies were not actually accurate as to what was going on with the water.
Okay, thank you. And then we have another from Dr. Carletta Chief. She says, thank you for your talk. And she says, I lead a program called Indifuse and Indigenous Food Energy and Water Security and Sovereignty. We work on off-grid technologies like food and water systems. How can we train students and faculty to appropriately work with Indigenous communities in resilience? So a little bit similar to the previous question.
We have to work together. winonashemp@gmail.com. Email me. You know, this is exactly what we got to do. winonashemp@gmail.com. We have to train all these young people that are in this class, and the more people, we got to train people in all of these technologies. And they're also like land-based according to your ecology. I mean, I'm working with some Navajo people, some Dene people by Cubero. They want us to adapt our solar panels, our solar thermal panels, to put a C channel at the bottom to collect the dew in the morning so that they can have water. You know, I never really thought about that. But what I'm saying is that the potential of innovation and adaptation with good, you know, spiritual instruction is great. And I think we have a very, you know, we just need to really do good work together. And the future is really about cooperation, not competition. You know, Philip Whiteman told me that. He's a great Northern Cheyenne leader. And for years I've known him. And one day he says to me, he stops me at the United Nations. He says, Winona, pulls me aside and says, Winona, the next economy is cooperation, not competition. I was like, that's it. So just, you know, let us work together to make a good future for our children. That's what Sitting Bull said. Let us make a good future for our children. We work together.
I think we have time for one more if anyone else in the room has a question. I see one now. We have, what is the value of adding wool to hemp textile? Do you work with international communities? I recently learned about Zapotec wool weaving and dyeing in Oh, I'm sorry.
Oaxaca.
Oaxaca, Mexico, and it is beautiful.
You know, I don't come from weavers, but I'm working on it. I'm just trying to provide a textile that is of high enough quality. And in Kibera, Ira Vandever and Blue Turquoise Weavers, I think that's what they're called. They took our wool, our hemp, and blended it with their pure sheep wool. So I'm just trying to provide a high quality fiber material for artists and weavers. That is not me. I'm a grower, and I'm super interested in the development of the industry. But yeah, so I'm hoping to do more of that in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Winona. Thanks for your patience for our technical difficulties. Your talk was very inspiring. I feel very blessed to have heard it. We hope to meet you in person someday. We hope everyone can stick around for some hors d'oeuvres in the courtyard here. And anything else? Oh, and of course, thank you so much to Mariah and all of the committee for putting this fun talk on today.
Yes, thank you so for having me, and I hope to get down to your neck of the woods one day when it's very cold up here and very warm down there. But be well, and know we were up here growing hemp, and keep an eye on us, and really the best for your year ahead, all of you. Miigwech.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Take care.
Should we leave?